I was an infantryman during the invasion of Iraq in 2003. My unit was 122 in 4th ID. We pushed into Baghdad and then took an airfield just north of the city. Then we headed north, up Highway 1. The majority of my unit stayed in Tikrit. My company kept going north with 366 Armory to a huge enemy ammo depot near Beiji. We began operating around that area, and then shortly moved to nearby K2 airfield and set up a more permanent FOB. K2 airfield had a residential area that had been abandoned, near the end of the runway. It was on-post housing for the Iraq Air Force personnel that ran the base, but they had left way before our arrival. Their move meant that now our residence was the new perimeter of our FOB closest to the ghost town, so we took up nighttime security every night around our warehouse. We would each do an hour shift, and we had a watch going all night long. We had thermal sights and night vision, and we would sit out there scanning the desert for enemy activity. During our watch, we could all hear children laughing and playing all night long. It sounded like a playground was active in the ghost town, but we verified with our thermal sights it was empty. We often had pebbles thrown at us. We would sit out there, alone or in pairs, and listen to the laughter while getting hit by rocks. Nothing big, but they would bounce off your face, your helmet, your vest, the whole time scanning with thermals and night vision. Nobody was there. But we could hear laughter. Nobody there. Just us listening to the laughter. This happened night after night. We all talked about it with each other. Nobody was happy about it, but we sucked it up. In 2004, we had a change of command, and upon hearing about the situation, our new commanding officer said, "There is no supernatural activity in this ghost town, only enemy activity." This was partially true because we had been attacked with sniper fire and RPGs from that direction multiple times. His decision was to set up a nightly patrol and set up ambushes in the ghost town. Every night we were already busy, looking for DMWs during the day, raiding Saddam's bathos during the night. We had been doing 18 to 36-hour patrols, QRF, convoy security, more patrols, show of force, ambushes, the works. And now this. So it began. My squad had done the new patrol a few times, and it always seemed extra dark walking through the ghost town. There was an old British fort left over from their colonial days, with firing ports and towers, streets with sidewalks, and pretty decent houses, all empty. While on patrol, we could still hear the kids playing, but it seemed just as faint as when we were on perimeter guard. We would get on a roof, lay there on ambush, and just listen. To the wind, the kids, and that's it. One night, we were patrolling through the ghost town in a modified wedge formation. One of our soldiers said, "What the fuck?" Then screamed, "What the fuck is that?" He pointed his weapon to the middle of our formation, then dropped his weapon and ran. He ran alone in the dark, unarmed, in the middle of a combat zone, away from everyone. Those of us that looked where he pointed saw it. Those of us that looked at the fleeing soldier heard it. Walking with us was a solid shadow, with roughly the shape of a person, tall, with really long arms, skinny legs, and a very narrow torso. It turned its head back and forth as if surprised to be discovered. It bent down, and then it leaped. It landed on top of a nearby chain-link fence still facing us, and moving its head to look at us. Its eyes then quickly flashed red, and then it jumped backwards off the fence and disappeared into the night. We caught up with the soldier. Our squad leader was super pissed. He got roughed up a bit, as he had absolutely lost it, screaming and crying. This soldier was solid. I've personally seen him shoot an enemy at close range. We'd all been through a lot, and we were both confident and competent. What we saw that night was not the scariest thing we had been through that deployment. Engaging the enemy on the regular was, but the enemy made sense. This creature didn't. It was by far the most disturbing thing I've ever witnessed, as it seemed to have a purpose keeping pace with us. From that point on, whenever it was our turn to patrol Ghost Town, our squad leader would lead us to just the edge and we would wait in ambush. I'm sure we all still appreciate that to this day. I'll start by saying I have a terrible biological father. He has been a shady person all of my life and constantly caused me a lot of grief. This is just one of those examples. When I was 4, my parents split up. My mother and I moved states, and they agreed I would visit my dad every school holidays for a week. This one particular time, I had been with him for a few days when I was playing with my cousin at a nearby park. A car pulled up, and I recognized the man as one of my dad's friends. He called me over, and without thinking, I ran over to him and left my cousin at the park. He asked me if I could show him where my dad lived, and I agreed and got in his car. I gave directions and didn't notice at all that they weren't following them correctly. After way too long, I did realize that we were getting closer to the city, which is far from my dad's house. We pulled up at a house I didn't recognize, and the man told me to wait in the car. I did. I didn't feel scared at all for some reason. He eventually took me inside, and I definitely started to feel unsafe then. I mainly remember 2 girls passed out with their tops off, and a much older man was feeling them up everywhere. I made eye contact with this man, and he made me sick to my stomach. I had definitely figured out that this was a bad situation by this point. A lady took me into a bedroom and brought me a sandwich. The bread was stale and I wasn't hungry, but I ate it all because I felt bad for her. Which doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what I was thinking about. The lady told me a lot of things I didn't understand, but when she left, I remember thinking my dad was coming to pick me up soon. I fell asleep waiting for him. I wet the bed that night and no one came to see me the next day until I cried very loudly and banged on the door. The lady came back and yelled at me for stinking up her bedroom, and I asked about my dad. She said he was coming tonight after he finished work. She didn't offer me a shower or a bath, so I sat in my soiled pants all day. After that, everything turned into a blur, really. My dad did not come that night, and I was so terrified. In my head, I felt like I was there for months. I thought I was missing school and everyone had forgotten about me. In reality, I was there for 5 days. They let me take 1 shower. I don't remember eating much except for boring sandwiches, and I had chips and gravy once. Finally, my mom drove across the country to come and get me. After not being able to get a hold of me or my dad for so long, and then me missing my pre-booked flight home, she panicked and came looking for me. Thank God she did. She found my dad at his girlfriend's house, methed out completely, hiding out. Turns out he owed a lot of drug money to the people who had taken me. They had told him that they had me, but he couldn't afford it, or he didn't want me back, whatever it was. He didn't bother to try and get me back. My amazing mom paid his debt for him after borrowing from a lot of people, and she came to get me back. I remember when someone came into that room and told me my mom was here, and I walked out and I could smell her. It was the best feeling to feel safe again. She took me home, and I didn't see my dad again for a long time. She never called the police. My parents' relationship was very complicated then, and I fully understand the choices she made. I'm definitely okay now. I've spoken about this in therapy, and I've come to terms with most of the things that I went through as a child. But still a fucked up situation for a 4-year-old girl to have been in. So to my dad's friend, the sandwich lady, and even to my dad himself, let's not meet. I want to start off by saying I have never experienced anything visual like this before. If there is any possible explanation, I would like to hear it. My girlfriend and I are in the process of moving into a basement suite. We still technically reside in our old place across town for another 3 days. Her name is the only one on the lease since we've been having some relationship issues due to work stress and personal problems. This basement suite we moved into had been completely gutted and most of the appliances and flooring replaced, except for the bathroom. It's now a city legal suite with its own water heater. Since there had been a massive police investigation done a few months prior, we weren't told much about what happened here other than drug-related incidents. I went into the bathroom to do some cleaning yesterday evening and noticed what looks like blood at the bottom of the radiator. It seemed creepy and I didn't want to touch it just because it's gross. Anyways, a few hours pass and my girlfriend goes to bed in the bedroom and I fall asleep on the couch watching TV. I woke up around 4 a.m. to our cat knocking a plant off the windowsill and fucking with the blinds. My girlfriend came out of the room to ask what was going on, and I was all pissed off, half asleep, cleaning dirt off the countertops. She told me to leave it for tomorrow and to just come to bed, and then walked away. I stayed up and continued cleaning for maybe 20 minutes since there was dirt all over the place. This is what fucking terrifies me even thinking about it now. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counters. I turned around towards the garbage can and my girlfriend is standing in the dark doorway just staring at me. I couldn't see her face clearly, but it was a 6-foot thin figure, the exact build as my girlfriend. I said, "Sorry if I'm keeping you up, I'm almost done." She stood there facing me. I figured she was just pissed off since we had been arguing off and on this whole week. I finished what I was doing and walked past her and asked if she was coming to bed. She didn't move. I walked straight into the bedroom and closed the door, and my girlfriend was laying there sleeping. I woke her up by closing the door, and I guess the look on my face scared her enough to make her spring up in bed. Wide awake and ask what happened repeatedly. I started gagging, swearing, and pretty much just lost it for a minute or two. I told her I just saw her in the kitchen, and she said, "Well, yeah, I came out earlier and asked what happened." I told her no, I just walked past her into the bedroom. She pretty much just went silent, peeked out of the door, and nothing was there. We both went to sleep a while later. I don't get strange feelings here at all, which is the weird part, but holy fuck. I have no idea what that was last night, and it scared me so bad I almost threw up when I realized my girlfriend had been sleeping this whole time. I have no idea what to make of that. This event happened to me around last summer. It was probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, and I wanted to share it so hopefully someone learns from it. Something I've realized growing up, year by year, is that this world can be an amazing place, but it is filled with some super sick people, and unfortunately, I've seen that side of our world firsthand. I'm a very social person, and I love the opportunity to hang with friends whenever. I'm also the type of person who's always looking for the next big thing. I guess I should tell you I was an 18-year-old male at the time of this story, and I have a decent-sized friend group of both boys and girls. Throughout high school, we had done a lot of crazy shit together. Being just out of high school, we wanted to do something insane together before departing for college, and we all decided to go camping in the middle of nowhere for 3 days. Fun, right? And for some miracles. All our parents thought it'd be fine. So we had 6 people going, me and my girlfriend Stephanie, my friend Brandon and his girlfriend, Kaylee and Steve and his girlfriend Sarah. We had decided to have 3 different tents for each couple for reasons you could probably guess. Being a former Boy Scout, I was aware on everything we needed to survive for 3 days: food, water, and other essential supplies. Being rebellious teenagers, we also stocked up on plenty of booze and weed for our fun getaway. So mid-July we depart for our camping vacation. After hours of driving, we eventually find a place that looks secluded enough but not too sketchy like some horror stories. There were houses nearby, but not too close. Again, we weren't looking for a sketchy place to camp, but unfortunately, there was no service. It took us at least an hour to get everything set up. While the girls and Steve finished setting up camp, Brendan and I took a look around while fetching firewood. We eventually came across a cool-looking trail. We weren't too concerned because there were houses within a mile radius, and we assumed that those people had used this trail to hunt, which was big in this area, or animals used it. If you're wondering about our car, we drove a Honda Pilot, which was Steve's, that has plenty of room for us and our supplies. We parked the car rather close to the site, so we had eyes on the car at all times. The first night, nothing much happened. We rolled a blunt and drank a bit and called it a night. The next day, we decided to explore the woods a bit, but Brendan and Kaylee stayed behind to watch the site and spend time together. We decided to go down the path we found earlier. Around 20 minutes down the path, Steve spots a metal fence. We approach it to find a cemetery. The cemetery looked old, but there were signs of activity there. And no, not some voodoo shit or cult, like flowers and notes left. And beyond the cemetery, we saw a bigger trail that had tire tracks and a half-assed parking lot for the cemetery. We venture down the path a bit more to spot some deer, then head back because it's getting late. That night we really partied hard because we were going to leave the next day and didn't want to return with extra beer or weed. Now this night was a polar opposite of the other night. The other night was peaceful, and we assumed the same about this night as we began to turn in. Boy, were we fucking wrong. Now, you would assume there would have been warning signs earlier in our trip, like a rusty knife on the path or foot tracks around our site. No, not at all. All of us woke up to a blood-curdling scream coming from Steve and Sarah's tent, as we hear the fabric being ripped by what we assumed to be something sharp. I guess Steve hit the guy really hard with his flashlight and was able to get both himself and Sarah to his car. Now here's the issue. Steve's tent is closest to the car while the other two tents are closer to the trail. So to get to Steve's car, we had to get past whatever attacked Steve and Sarah. Luckily, our drunken selves were gone, because before getting into his car he yelled, "Cemetery." And it clicked in my head, the trail on the other side of the cemetery, so I quickly grabbed Brendan, Kaylee, and Stephanie and start running toward the trail. I used my phone flashlight to help see. You might think why you would turn your flashlight on. Well, last thing I wanted to do was miss the cemetery and be lost in the woods with the guy who attacked Steve. By the time we get to the trail, Steve and Sarah had gotten the fuck out from the site, and we could hear the guy chasing us but from several yards behind. We were able to find the cemetery rather easily, and I hop over the fence first. When we all got over the fence, we noticed Steve had not arrived yet, so we all hid in the cemetery. Luckily, to our advantage, it was pitch black by the time I turned my flashlight off, and we all hid in complete silence. My heart dropped when I heard the metallic shaking as if someone was climbing over the fence. The guy had tracked us down, probably due to the fact that Steve yelled cemetery. We all stayed still as we heard the ground crunch as the guy took slow steps. When in fight or flight moments, you are capable of a lot more than you would think, and your brain is put on super high alert mode. As the guy approached, I realized I had my small pocket knife in my pocket. As the guy's steps grew closer to me, when he was right on top of me, I grabbed the knife and lodged it into the back of his knee. The guy tumbled to the ground with a shriek of pain and a metallic sound as he dropped his weapon. Soon the pair of headlights came around the corner. Steve had made it. We all got up and ran toward the car. While I got up, the light gave me a glimpse of the guy. He was tall, bulky, and had the look of pure hatred in his eyes as he clutched the back of his knee, and by his side, a huge machete. I was the last one to get in the car, and even before I fully closed the door, Steve floored it out of there. The girls were bawling their eyes out. We drove until we saw the first house, where we politely knocked and asked for directions to a motel or something. It was a friendly old couple. They told us there wasn't a motel for miles. They took us in and gave us warm food and a place to rest for the remainder of the night. In the morning, the man brought his hunting rifle with us to retrieve our stuff from our camping site. When we got there, there was nothing stolen, but all of our tents were slashed up. The elderly woman called and made a report while we were gone, and when we got back, the officers were at their home, and we gave our statements. The officers said there wasn't enough evidence to find the guy, but he promised he'd search. We headed home later that day. No one said a word on the way home. We were all processing what really happened. The police, unfortunately, never found the guy. Yeah, college split us up a bit, but we barely talked about it as a group, and it's been a year. My advice to all of you is please find a populated place to camp. I don't care if it's some Yogi Bear camp. It's more safe to be in reach of help and the police. Stay safe, guys. Please.